Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into a story that, honestly, feels like it's ripped from a really wild screenplay. It's almost unbelievable.
It really stretches credulity, doesn't it? We're talking about huge wealth, betrayal on a massive scale, but then it just spirals into something else entirely.
Exactly. This isn't just your standard messy divorce among the super rich. We're looking at the saga of Sergio Pino, a giant in Miami real estate, and his estranged wife, Tatiana.
And the absolute core of it, the thing that just shocked everyone, is this powerful guy worth hundreds of millions allegedly hires multiple crews. We're talking up to 9 killers involved. Over at least 7 different distinct attempts to have his wife murdered.
And here's the kicker. Every single plot fails.
Yeah.
Like spectacularly badly. It's almost darkly comic in a way.
Until the end, which is just tragic and deeply shocking. The ultimate irony, it's the tycoon, Sergio Pino, not the target, Tatiana, who ends up dead. Suicide during an FBI raid.
So yeah, our mission today is to give you the full picture, the shortcut to understanding this whole tangled mess. We need to go from that perfect family facade they presented.
Right, the philanthropic power couple.
To the desperate poisoning plot. This parade of bungling hitmen. The suicide itself, and then the massive, messy fight over the fortune that followed.
It's really a case study, isn't it?
Right.
How obsession, maybe greed, can just utterly destroy everything, not just reputation, but life itself.
Yeah.
To really grasp the sheer drama here, you have to understand who Sergio Pino was. I mean, the scale of his life. He was born in Cuba back in 1956, Spanish heritage.
Right, and like so many others, his story really takes off when the family moves to Miami. He was only 12 then.
And Miami, well, became his stage. But he didn't start at the top. His beginnings were pretty grounded. He started as a plumbing contractor in 1977.
A plumber? Wow. So not real estate initially.
No, not at first. But he was successful at it, built a solid business, achieved that sort of upper middle class life. Comfortable, but not yet the empire built.
Okay, so he's building his plumbing business. When does the story shift?
The real acceleration, the point where his trajectory changes, seems to coincide with meeting Tatiana. This was 1985. Sergio was 29, already divorced, with 2 kids from that first marriage.
And Tatiana? How old was she?
She was just 17, still a student, working part-time as a cashier in her family's supermarket.
17? And he was 29. Quite an age gap there.
Yeah, and the accounts say he was just instantly captivated. Her beauty, apparently. He pursued her very intensely. It seems like he saw her as the partner he needed for the next stage, the bigger ambitions he had.
So it was this sort of classic power couple in the making? His business drive, presence?
Something like that. And their relationship really took off just as his business focus shifted. By 1989, he makes the jump from plumbing contracting into real estate development, a much bigger pond.
And that's where things really explode for him.
Absolutely. They get married in 1992. Big wedding, apparently 600 guests, a real society event. And he founds Century Home Builders Group.
Century Home Builders, that's the name you hear associated with him constantly. Huge player.
Massive. We're talking one of the biggest Hispanic-owned home builders in the U.S. They built something like over 16,000 homes across Florida, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, key growth markets.
So he wasn't just rich, he was influential, connected.
Deeply. A leader in the Hispanic business community, political connections, and, importantly for their image, a noted philanthropist.
Which brings us to that facade you mentioned, the perfect image.
For decades, that's exactly what they projected. Generous donors, schools, churches, the Red Cross. You'd see them in the papers, the flawless, successful, happy couple, living the dream.
The ultimate Miami success story. But then, the crack appears.
Yeah, 2017, Sergio's 61 at this point. Yeah. And, well, the sources put it delicately. He committed the mistake men sometimes make. He had an affair.
The classic catalyst. So this perfect image gets tarnished. How did Tatiana react?
This is the crucial turning point. She was faced with this betrayal, and she made a choice. She decided to forgive him, to stay in the marriage.
Wow. Forgive an affair after decades of projecting perfection. Why do you think she did that? There must have been immense pressure.
Oh, undoubtedly. You have to remember, with that level of wealth, they weren't just a couple. They were an institution, a brand. Divorcing would have been seismic, fracturing the image, the finances, the social standing. Hundreds of millions at stake.
So forgiving, while maybe emotionally wrenching, was perhaps the pragmatic choice to keep the structure intact.
It seems plausible, doesn't it? But preserving the structure didn't necessarily heal the relationship. That decision to stay despite the affair, it seems to have introduced this undercurrent.
Yeah.
Bitterness, maybe. Vulnerability,
A
certainly.
fundamental shift in the dynamic.
Exactly. That crack, that forgiveness, without maybe real resolution, it arguably set the stage for everything that followed. Once the trust was gone, maybe the marriage became more transactional. That opened the door to, well, much darker possibilities.
Okay, so the affair happens in 2017. Tatiana forgives him. They stay together. But things aren't really okay, are they? Where does it shift from marital tension to something far more sinister?
It seems to begin subtly, just 2 years later. July 2019. Tatiana, she's 51 by now, starts feeling really unwell, but it's vague, confusing symptoms at first.
This is where it gets really weird, right? The medical mystery phase.
Yeah.
What was she experiencing?
Things like chronic nausea, constant vomiting, and this really specific detail keeps coming up. A weird taste in her mouth. Metallic, maybe chemical. Initially, she just, chalked it up to maybe early menopause.
A reasonable assumption for a woman her age, I guess.
Yeah.
But it wasn't menopause.
Not even close. The symptoms didn't just linger, they got dramatically worse. We're talking about a period of about 2.5 years, from late 2019 into early 2022, where she's in this constant cycle of medical crises.
How bad are we talking?
Get this. Records show police and fire rescue were called to their mansion, the Pino residence, over 35 times during that period.
35 emergency calls. For one person.
Yes.
That's almost every other week. What was happening during these episodes?
It was serious stuff. Hospitalizations, episodes where she was apparently foaming at the mouth, having seizures, severe trouble breathing, fainting spells. It was terrifying.
And the doctors, what did they think was going on?
Well, that's the thing. They were struggling. Leading to misdiagnoses. She was diagnosed with epilepsy at one point. Also, severe cardiac problems.
Cardiac problems. That explains the pacemaker.
Exactly. The symptoms were convincing enough that in 2020, she actually had a pacemaker implanted to manage what doctors thought were life-threatening heart rhythm issues.
So she's got a pacemaker. She thinks she might have epilepsy. She's constantly sick. This must have been destroying her life.
Completely. It got so bad, she was apparently too ill to even properly participate in the planning for her older daughter's wedding in January 2022. Just totally incapacitated by this mystery illness.
Unbelievable. And then things escalate even further, right? February 2022.
That seems to be the absolute crisis point. 2 incredibly scary, life-threatening incidents just 1 week apart. First, on February 8th, her daughter finds her unconscious, and crucially, she was turning purple.
Turning purple. That sounds like lack of oxygen, like her breathing stopped.
Precisely. Police and fire rescue rush in, CPR, defibrillator.
Yeah.
They managed to bring her back. But something critical happened during that response.
Okay, what was it?
A fire rescue lieutenant on the scene, looking at her condition, the respiratory depression, the unconsciousness, made a call. He administered Narcan.
Narcan. Isn't that the drug they use for opioid overdose?
Exactly. Naloxone. The fact that an EMT suspected an opioid overdose in a situation like this wealthy woman, known heart issues, maybe epilepsy, that's a huge flag, it suggests her symptoms look like poisoning, not just a natural medical event.
Wow. Did anything come of that immediately?
Not definitively, it seems. But then, just a week later, February 16th, another major episode. Seizure-like, she stops breathing again. Her daughters must have been absolutely desperate.
I can't even imagine. What did they do?
They decided they couldn't rely on the local diagnoses anymore. In March 2022, they took her out of state, all the way to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. They went to see a top epilepsy specialist, thinking maybe that was the key.
A desperate move, but maybe the right one.
Absolutely the right one. The specialist at Hopkins did a full workup and quickly ruled out epilepsy. But Hopkins had this policy in place. Because of a local spike in overdoses, they were doing routine fentanyl screenings on incoming patients.
It's a standard procedure there at the time.
Yeah. So the doctor ordered the screen, probably just ticking a box.
Don't tell me.
Bingo. The test comes back positive. Not just positive, but showing significant, persistent levels of fentanyl in her system.
Fentanyl. Oh, my God. The synthetic opioid. The one that's incredibly potent.
100 times stronger than morphine, roughly. The doctors were apparently dumbfounded. It causes dizziness, nausea, low blood pressure, and crucially, respiratory arrest, which leads to cardiac arrest.
It explains everything. The vomiting, the weird taste, the breathing problems, the collapsing, the turning purple. It was fentanyl all along.
It fits perfectly. And it explains why it was missed for so long. Fentanyl acts relatively quickly and metabolizes. So unless you test at the exact right moment,
It might not show up in a standard hospital blood test later on. But how was he administering it?
The logical conclusion Tatiana reached was that Sergio had been tampering with her prescribed medications. Maybe dissolving it in drinks, maybe putting it into pill capsules she was already taking daily. He had the access, the opportunity.
And the motive? The divorce.
The massive financial motive. Their net worth estimates were huge, remember? Up to $359 million in some court docs. A 50-50 split? That's potentially $180 million Sergio stood to lose if she died. He kept it all.
So, confronted with the fentanyl test, what did Tatiana do?
Her doctors basically told her, you need to get out of that environment immediately. So she moved out right away. And the most telling part, she later testified that as soon as she left that house, all those mysterious, debilitating symptoms completely stopped.
Wow, just stopped.
Completely. She filed for divorce in April 2022. The silent poisoning attempt had failed. Now, the fight was out in the open.
And Sergio's response? Did he confess?
Absolutely not. Later, under deposition, he flatly denied it. I don't do those things, was his quote. But the evidence of the fentanyl, the symptoms stopping, the money it was building a pretty strong circumstantial case, and it apparently pushed him towards a much more direct, much more violent approach.
Okay, so the fentanyl plot is exposed. Tatiana moves out, files for divorce. The pressure on Sergio must have been immense now, not just the money, but the potential criminal implications.
Exactly. The stakes were incredibly high. And the divorce negotiations were apparently going nowhere. Reports say Pino was only offering her 10% of the assets, maybe $36 million, give or take.
10%. When she was likely legally entitled to 50, which could be, what, over $150 million, could be closer to $180 million?
Right, a huge gap. And it seems that desperation, maybe rage, pushed him over the edge. Since the subtle poisoning was detected, the strategy allegedly shifted to, well, brute force.
He needed professional help, as the outline says. But here's the thing that baffles me. This guy is a multi-millionaire tycoon, presumably knows powerful people. Why does he end up hiring what sounds like a bunch of amateurs?
That is one of the central, almost farcical elements of this whole saga. A man who could orchestrate complex real estate deals seemed utterly inept at hiring competent criminals. He apparently put together this large murder crew.
Like multiple people.
Yes, involving two distinct groups led by two guys who actually worked for him in other capacities. And the total number of hired killers involved, according to the investigation, was 9.
9 people?
Yeah.
To kill one person? That seems excessive and risky. More people to talk.
It suggests either total desperation to get the job done after the poisoning failed, or maybe just really poor management of his alleged murder-for-hire operation. The reported bounty was $300,000 spread among them.
Okay, let's walk through these attempts, because they are just wild. Attempt number 1, the cowardly car crash, August 2023.
Right. This is the first clear act of violence after the divorce filing. A 4-man team tasked with staging a fatal car accident, and the vehicle they used, a large pickup truck.
Let me guess, not exactly inconspicuous.
Rented from Home Depot, and one of the guys arrested for this, Baron Bennett, actually worked for Pino, serving drinks on his yacht, the Century Star.
The yacht attendant is now a hitman driving a rented Home Depot truck. You cannot be serious.
It gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. The crew apparently discussed trying a head-on collision, right? High impact. But they decided against it because they were afraid they might get hurt themselves.
They were worried about whiplash while trying to commit murder. The incompetence is staggering.
So their brilliant alternative was to just reverse the truck quickly and ram her car as she was pulling into her own driveway. They hit the rear passenger side door.
Did it work? Was she hurt?
Not at all. She was apparently unharmed, got out of her car, probably ready to exchange insurance info, and the 4 killers just panicked and drove off in the rental truck. Total failure.
Unbelievable. Okay, attempt number 2. This one sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. The pacemaker hijack.
Yeah, this shifts gears completely, suggesting that second crew had different, maybe more tech-savvy skills. Remember that pacemaker she got back in 2020 for the supposed heart problems?
The one implanted because she was being poisoned, possibly.
Whoa.
Oh, the irony.
Exactly. Well, a hacker associated with the second 5-man team allegedly targeted the chip in that specific medical device.
They hacked her pacemaker. How is that even possible? What was the goal?
The goal was to remotely trigger it to discharge. A massive electrical shock intended to cause a fatal heart event that would look like a medical malfunction. And apparently they actually succeeded in triggering the discharge. Oh my God, so it worked.
Technically, yes, the device discharged. But here's the insane luck, or maybe fate again. Tatiana happened to be at the hospital for a routine checkup when it happened.
No way.
Yes, she was already hooked up to monitors. Medical staff saw the event immediately, intervened, and saved her life. Right there. She then had the device replaced with one that couldn't be accessed remotely. Another plot foiled by sheer, unbelievable timing.
This is like a comedy of errors, but with deadly intent. What was attempt 3?
Back to low-tech, the potash plan. This involved injecting her with a potassium solution, potash, which can cause heart failure that looks relatively natural on an initial autopsy. Classic hitman stuff.
Simple, effective, if you can get close.
And that was the problem. They simply couldn't get close enough to her. She likely had security, was where she was a target. The plan was just abandoned. They couldn't execute.
Okay, so car crash failed, pacemaker hack failed, injection failed. What's next? Attempt 4 sounds intense. The jammed gun in the daughter, June 2024. This was the closest call, the most direct physical confrontation. A gunman, supposedly claiming he was a sharpshooter, actually confronted Tatiana in her yard, raised the weapon to fire point blank, and the gun jammed. It just failed to fire.
You are kidding me, the gun jammed.
That's the report. Gave Tatiana just enough time to scream and scramble into her garage for safety, but it didn't end there. There's a really disturbing twist involving her younger daughter, Alessandra.
What happened?
Hearing the commotion, Alessandra rushed out of the house. The gunman then apparently turned and pointed the weapon directly at her.
At the daughter.
Yes. And this is where Sergio Pino's alleged role gets even more complex. He was reportedly in contact with the hit team, maybe remotely, and when he realized they were pointing the gun at his daughter, he supposedly screamed at them to stop. Something like, "That's my daughter too, abort."
Well, so the man orchestrating her mother's murder steps in to save the daughter. That's profoundly messed up. Paternal instinct kicking in, even mid-murder plot.
A truly bizarre moment. Okay, moving on quickly. Attempt number 5, arson.
Try to burn her out now.
They targeted her sister's house because Tatiana was often staying there after moving out. But again, total incompetence. They only managed to set fire to 3 cars parked outside. Nobody hurt. The house was fine. Another failure.
This string of failures is just unbelievable. The crash, the hack, the jammed gun, the failed arson. Did this finally make Tatiana go to the authorities in a bigger way?
Yes. All these bizarre, escalating accidents combined with the initial fentanyl evidence led her to formally involve the police and the FBI, laying out the whole suspected conspiracy.
And that led to Attempt 6.
Well, it led to the prevention of Attempt 6. Acting on the mounting evidence, the police and FBI got a warrant to raid Sergio Pino's office.
And what did they find?
They found a large stash of cyanide.
Cyanide? So he was going back to poison.
It appears so. A different, even more notorious poison this time. Finding the cyanide was huge. It wasn't just another failed attempt. It was hard physical proof of intent to procure and likely use lethal poison. It blew the case wide open for the FBI.
So the discovery of the cyanide basically sealed his fate, legally speaking.
It certainly moved him firmly into the crosshairs as the primary suspect in a major federal murder-for-hire investigation. The net was closing.
So the FBI finds the cyanide. They have cooperating witnesses from the failed hits, the fentanyl evidence. The case against Sergio Pino must have looked overwhelming by this point.
It seems so. Things moved very quickly after that discovery. The climax comes in July 2024. Federal agents, including a full FBI SWAT team, raid Sergio Pino's huge mansion in Coral Gables. They have an arrest warrant for him related to the murder-for-hire plot.
A SWAT raid. So they clearly considered him dangerous or a flight risk.
Given the circumstances, yes. And it wasn't just him. It was a coordinated takedown. 9 of his alleged co-conspirators were arrested around the same time, including those employees we mentioned, Baron Bennett, the yacht guy, and Michael Dufo, one of the crew leaders.
So the whole network was collapsing. Did they get confessions?
They got cooperation. Dolfo later pleaded guilty to racketeering, stalking, using a firearm. Another man, Avery Bivens, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder for hire, stalking, brandishing a firearm. Both agreed to cooperate to testify against the others, presumably including Pino.
Okay, so the case looks locked tight. They raid the mansion to arrest Pino. And then what?
And then they find him dead. Before the SWAT team could actually arrest him, Sergio Pino, 67 years old, was found in an upstairs bedroom. He had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Suicide.
Wow, he took his own life rather than face arrest and trial.
That was certainly the dominant narrative. Law enforcement, the public mostly, saw it as him fleeing justice, the guilty man taking the easy way out rather than face the consequences.
But his lawyer had a different spin, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. His attorney, Sam Rabin, came out swinging. He claimed Pino was completely innocent and that he died to prove his innocence. A sort of martyrdom narrative. Rabin heavily criticized the raid itself, calling it unprecedented and unnecessary, implying the aggressive police action pushed Pino to suicide. He said they'd offered to have Pino surrender peacefully if needed.
So, two completely opposite interpretations of his final act. Guilty conscience or innocent man pushed too far. We'll likely never know for sure, I suppose.
He died before being formally charged in the conspiracy, even though the evidence seemed overwhelming. But what's really striking, almost chilling, is what he was apparently doing right before his death.
What do you mean?
It seems his final hours weren't spent in quiet reflection, but in a last-ditch, almost spiteful effort to control things from beyond the grave, specifically to make absolutely sure Tatiana got nothing.
He was still focusing on the money, even then.
It appears so. He reportedly took rapid steps just before the raid to change his financial arrangements. Things like adjusting who was managing projects at Century Home Builders, presumably putting loyalists in place.
And the will.
That was the main thing. He wrote a new will, he modified his trusts, and the sole purpose seemed to be scrubbing Tatiana's name off everything, completely disinheriting her.
Even though his death would technically end the divorce proceedings.
Yes. He made sure his estate wouldn't go to her, it was left to his 4 children, and, very importantly, to his brother Carlos Pino. He named Carlos as the personal representative, the executor, putting him in charge of everything.
So his final act was this attempt to financially annihilate his wife, the woman he allegedly tried to kill multiple times.
A final act of control, or maybe spite. The man, terrified of losing half his fortune in divorce, ended up losing his life, but tried to ensure she still got 0.
So Sergio Pino dies. But the fight is far from over. It just shifts arenas, right?
Right.
From divorce court with all its drama to probate court, which sounds just as messy.
If not messier. Tatiana survived all the attempts on her life, but now she had to battle Sergio's ghost, essentially. His last will and his brother Carlos, who was now in control of the estate.
And she challenged the will immediately. What grounds did she use? That must be tough.
Very tough. Her legal team went for a really aggressive, high-stakes strategy. They argued the will should be thrown out because it was written under an insane delusion.
Insane delusion. That sounds dramatic. What does that actually mean in legal terms? Is that common?
It's not common, and it's incredibly difficult to prove. Basically, they had to show 2 things. First, that Sergio was suffering from a persistent, irrational belief that had absolutely no basis in reality, the delusion. Second, and this is the crucial part, they had to prove that this specific delusion directly caused him to change his will and cut her out.
Okay, so what was the alleged delusion here? Believing aliens told him to do it.
Not quite that exotic. The delusion, according to her lawyers, was Sergio's absolute, unwavering belief in his own innocence regarding the murder-for-hire plots. They argued, look, the evidence is overwhelming the fentanyl, the hitmen, the cyanide he was involved. His refusal to accept that reality, even to the point of suicide, was the insane delusion that warped his judgment and made him disinherit her purely out of that false belief.
That's a fascinating legal argument. Connecting his denial of the crime directly to the validity of the will. Did it work?
It's a very high bar, as I said. Usually it's for cases where someone thinks their spouse is poisoning them when they aren't, or something clearly detached from reality. But it's certainly put immense pressure on the estate and on Carlos Pino.
And speaking of Carlos, Tatiana was fighting him on other fronts too, right?
Yes, fiercely. She accused Carlos and Sergio of working together before Sergio's death to basically hide assets, siphoning millions from joint marital property into corporate structures controlled by Carlos, trying to put it beyond her reach in the divorce.
Plus, wasn't there huge confusion about how much the estate was even worth?
Massive confusion, those financial statements from the divorce case. They showed net worth figures ranging from, $153 million all the way up to $359 million. That kind of discrepancy makes dividing anything incredibly complicated.
So years of legal battles seemed inevitable. How did it finally get resolved? Because there was a resolution, right?
There was. And the ultimate twist, the thing that finally settled the biggest piece of the puzzle, wasn't the insane delusion claim or the criminal case fallout. It came down to a piece of corporate paperwork from years earlier.
Corporate paperwork, you mean like A contract.
Exactly. In August 2025, so quite a while after his death, Tatiana's lawyers secured a massive victory based on the 2013 operating agreement for Century Home Builders Group.
2013, what did that agreement say?
When you set up a big company like that, the operating agreement lays out the rules, how it runs, who owns what, and crucially, what happens to an owner's share if they die. It's a binding contract.
And Sergio overlooked something in that agreement.
It seems so. That 2013 agreement apparently stipulated that upon Sergio's death, his ownership share in Century Home Builders Group would automatically transfer directly to Tatiana.
Automatically.
Yeah.
Regardless of his later will.
In many cases, yes. These operating agreements can function like contracts that supersede wills when it comes to the company's shares. He might have forgotten about it or thought his new will and trust would override it, but legally, under Florida corporate law, apparently, that 2013 document held sway.
So the result was?
The result was staggering. Tatiana Pino was awarded full ownership of Century Home Builders Group.
Wow. Just wow. The very company, the foundation of the fortune he died trying to keep from her, ended up entirely in her hands because of a contract he signed years before.
The ultimate irony, isn't it? He was so focused on changing his will and trusts in those last moments, he missed the binding power of his own company's foundational documents.
So she got the company. Is that the end of the story financially? Also?
Not quite entirely. Remember those last-minute maneuvers Sergio made, transferring his company's stake into trusts for employees? That was likely a violation of a judge's order during the divorce, which probably barred moving major assets. So there's still legal cleanup from that.
Oh, okay. Loose ends.
Yeah, and ongoing disputes about profits from big deals that happened around the time of his death, like a $71.5 million property sale, 850 living in Miami. How that money gets allocated is probably still being fought over. But the main prize, Century Home Builders itself, that's hers. The company built by the man who tried to kill her 7 times. #tag outro.
When you step back and look at this whole thing, it's a deeply disturbing picture, isn't it? Of how immense wealth and the fear of losing it, combined with betrayal, can lead to a total moral collapse.
Absolutely. Sergio Pino had everything, objectively speaking, the business empire, the social standing, the family. Yet this fear, this greed maybe, drove him down this path. And the methods. It's almost surreal. It really is. It starts with this calculated, hidden violence, the fentanyl poisoning, trying to make it look natural. Then, when that's exposed, it descends into this almost slapstick series of failures with hired help, the yacht attendant, the rented truck, the jammed gun.
It's like he lost all sense of proportion, all capability for rational planning outside of his business deals. The methods became cruder, more desperate.
And in the end, what did it achieve? The man who was apparently terrified of losing half his fortune in a divorce, maybe $180 million, ended up forfeiting everything. His life, his reputation, and ultimately, because of that 2013 agreement he overlooked, control of his entire company.
The final irony is just inescapable. Tatiana Pino survives 7 attempts on her life, orchestrated by her husband, and she ends up with the very asset, the core of his empire, that he died trying to keep away from her. She now runs Century Home Builders.
It really challenges our perceptions, too. People described Pino as generous, kind even. It's a stark reminder that outward appearances, especially with the ultra-wealthy, can mask deep desperation or profound character flaws. Wealth doesn't prevent irrationality. Sometimes it seems to fuel it.
Which brings us to that final thought, something for you to chew on. In these incredibly high-stakes situations, driven by money, driven by ego, how often does that intense focus on not losing, on holding on to power and wealth, completely blind someone to simpler, less catastrophic solutions?
Was it purely about the money for Sergio Pino? Or was it the shame, the fear of public failure represented by losing half his empire?
What drives a person who has everything to risk it all in the most destructive way possible? Something to think about.